Hey guys, it's Frozenballz here, and welcome to yet another episode of Minmaxer's Playground. Today, we're going to be talking about Nekros. Now recently, Nekros Prime came out with the Tigris Prime and the Galatine Prime. Nekros is supposed to be sort of like a necromancer, but in terms of Warframe, he isn't really that much of a necromancer, but more of a janitor as far as I'm concerned. He's a janitor in the sense that he runs around the battlefield, cleaning up corpses and getting more loot out of their pockets. Which I feel is a little bit undignified for the Lord of Shadows, sort of. Having said that, however, despite all the changes that came to Nekros, he is still the undisputed king for getting more loot or getting more resources out of enemies and is one of the best frames for farming. This ability to generate or re-roll the loot tables of dead enemies is one of the reasons why it makes Nekros one of the most essential frames for new players to get as when they start their career on Warframe, and it's a frame that they'll be sticking by throughout their entire journey of Warframe itself. Desecrate is an ability which re-rolls the loot tables for dead enemies, which in turn gives you a better chance of getting more loot. Shadows of the Dead is a ability which spawns in shadows of the enemies that you killed and can be used as cannon fodder or, just to kind of distract the enemy itself. To be honest, friendly AI is still pretty stupid in Warframe, so as far as I'm concerned, don't actually expect them to do that much damage or to actually be useful as, killing machines. They will still be good as, shields to soak up incoming damage though. Terrify is a very useful ability in the sense that you can use it as a quick cast ability to CC enemies if you ever get into a tight spot. And having Soul Punch with the augment is very handy for quick battlefield revives as well, as opposed to, holding E over a person and reviving them slowly. The first build is the main build, which I use a lot and a lot of people use as well, which is the Desecrate build. This build revolves around using 2 augments as opposed to just 1. You use Despoil and Soul Survivor. The reason you use Soul Survivor is for quick battlefield revives where holding E would end up you being dead. As opposed to that, you can just quickly use your Soul Punch on a down teammate and instantly revive them. Despoil is handy because it basically means you will not be using energy for your Desecration. Instead, you'll be using your HP. And since Desecrate creates a massive amount of HP orbs anyway, you'll be constantly refreshing your HP so you won't have to actually worry about your health going too low. The Desecrate build is all about re-rolling the loot tables of dead enemies. Maximum range is what allows this. For this particular reason, you're going to use a combination of Stretch, Overextended, and Cunning Drift. The higher range you have, the more likely you are to cover any bodies of dead enemies should your teammates be a little bit away from where you are, so you don't actually miss out on potential loot. Since you don't need duration for a Desecrate build, you can actually go with Fleeting Expertise over Streamline for even further efficiency. Handspring is an excellent utility mod which aids in your survival, so might as well use that in your Excellence slot. Since Despoil uses HP instead of energy for Desecration, we use Vitality for this particular reason. Vitality offers you a bigger HP pool and also aids in higher survivability as well at the same time. For the last mod, we use Health Conversion. Health Conversion is a mod which you get from Cephalon Samaris. This mod basically gives you 450 armor, which stacks up to 3 times every single time you pick up an HP orb. When you take damage, the stack will be consumed after 3 seconds. The reason why Health Conversion is such a good mod to use with Nekros is for the simple reason that with a Despoil build for Nekros, you're going to be using your HP to desecrate the bodies. What this means is you will also be generating a lot of HP orbs. You use these HP orbs to give yourself the armor stacks, which increases your tankiness and survivability of your Nekros, and at the same time, since you're picking up the HP orbs, this also means you also have a constantly regenerating pool of HP/energy to keep desecrating. On top of this, if you add Arcane Pulse, you have even further HP regeneration. Arcane Pulse works like Arcane Energize, except it involves HP as opposed to energy. A frame which is dedicated to regenerating HP orbs, you can see exactly why this works so well with a Nekros. In terms of gameplay, it's pretty straightforward. You activate his third ability, which becomes a toggle, and you just run around killing enemies. The more body parts there are, the more chances of loot reroll happening, which is why weapons with high slash damage are the weapons of choice for a Nekros. Take something like a Flux Rifle, or a Tigris Prime, or even a Bratton Prime, and watch the number of enemies just fall apart into like 2 or 3 bits, and then watch the Desecration do its work. As opposed to using a weapon which doesn't actually create more body parts, and is just like kills them instantly. Your other abilities become complementary for your own survival. Shadows of the Dead, you call them in if you ever need extra bodies to tank some incoming damage. Soul Punch is for quick knockback and CC or reviving if you're using the augment, and Terrify is your quick pocket CC. The second build for Nekros is a Terrify's Focus build. This is purely for CC. Now before you say it, there are many other frames that can do CC much better, but the redeeming factor for Nekros is that CC from Terrify is an instacast, as well as having a very quick animation as well at the same time. For this particular reason, you stack extra range, and you'll be able to crowd control entire groups of enemies at a time. With this particular build, you'll be able to affect 31 enemies within 30 meters. This results in your survival for the simple reason that enemies that are crowd controlled and not shooting at you means there's less incoming DPS. Just like the previous build, this build works excessively well with Arcane Pulse as well as Arcane Energize just because of the abilities being used. Desecrate, since it's a toggled ability, you might as well have it on 24/7. Shadows, you can cast them if you ever need them. Soul Punch can be still used to knock back enemies for other CC should you ever need it, especially when you're fighting, say, against elites or something like that. But your bread and butter CC is still going to be Terrify itself. Since the amount of enemies being affected by Shadows of the Dead relies on power strength, you can't go with a maximum overextended. For this particular reason, you go with a maximum stretch and cunning drift, and you go with the rank 2 overextended. Quick thinking and prime flow add to your EHP, which increases survivability at the same time. Transient Fortitude and Intensify are the power strength mods which you use in this particular case because using Blind Rage would be too expensive and less power efficient. Streamline adds to your power efficiency, and Creeping Terrify is the augment of choice for this particular build for it to work. As usual, your aura is defined by the type of enemy you fight, but Corrosive Projection is the default aura which I tend to go with. Those are my two main builds which I use for Nekros. However, there is one third build which I will mention in passing. It's not one of those things which I use that much, but it is a valid build which people can use. And for some people, it might actually be an interesting build which they might actually like using. So for the sake of that, I'll show the min-max version of it, but it's not something which I use that much. For me, Nekros is just about Desecrate or Terrify. This build revolves around high survivability through Shadows of the Dead as well as your HP mods itself. Combining Vitality, Health Conversion, and Despoil means you will be regenerating HP orbs and regenerating your HP as well. Arcane Pulse works perfectly in this scenario as well. Shadows of the Dead is affected by Power Strength, where Power Strength defines the damage, HP, and shields that your shadows get, even though they are limited to a maximum of 7 spawns at max rank. For that particular reason, you use a combination of Blind Rage with Power Drift to get yourself enough Power Strength to give a good bonus. Since Shadows of the Dead is now affected by Duration, where Duration defines the amount of HP drain per second, you need to stack some Power Duration as well in the form of Prime Continuity. Whenever a shadow dies, you just cast your 4 again to get your shadows back to tank all the incoming damage for you. And if you need to top up their HP, just cast your 4 for regenerating their HP at the same time. Any shadows that go more than 30 meters away from you get teleported back, so they kind of stay in close proximity to you to make sure that they maintain that wall of, soaking up incoming damage. An alternative to using Streamline is replacing it with Equilibrium. This is assuming you are confident that your arcanes will provide enough energy and HP for you. Otherwise, just stick with Streamline, stick with what you know. And I think that's pretty much it in terms of all the builds for Nekros. Don't get me wrong, he is still a good frame, like he has different capabilities and playstyles, but at the end of the day, he's still an essential frame for farming, for resources, just because of the kind of game Warframe is. The Nekros rework basically made him a bit easier to play, where you're not just standing around pressing 3 over and over, and actually made him worth building for his other abilities, or rather being able to use his other abilities outside of just using Desecrate. However, he did take a hit in terms of efficiency. So you traded a little bit of efficiency for your Desecration, for more freedom in terms of playstyle and being able to move around instead of standing in one place pressing 3 over and over. And I think that's kind of like a better shift in direction for the Warframe itself. And that's it for this video as well, guys. Thank you very much for watching. It's Frozenballz, and again, if you like what you saw, make sure you leave a like, a comment, a subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.